Alright, hello everyone. So this is a updated video on how to install MySQL Server as well as MySQL Workbench on the Windows environment. So what we need to do is to launch our browser and go to mysql.com, and by doing so you should be brought to this particular web page. So what we are interested is this download button, so we click on that. You can see that there's quite different varieties of installation that we can choose. So to keep it simple, we will now go to MySQL Community GPL Downloads, which is towards the bottom of this page right here. So let me click on that. Alright, and here basically is the community download. For Windows user, the installation is quite straightforward. For Mac user, please refer to the other set of information. Unfortunately, I do not have a Mac environment, so I'm unable to actually record my own video to demonstrate to you the installation process on the Mac environment. So please do refer those materials on Mac installation. So for Windows user, we will use Mysql Installer for Windows, which essentially will allow us to download an installer, which makes the installation process pretty much simple. So over here, you can see the MySQL Installer 8.0.21, which is the most current version of MySQL. There are actually two packages that you can download. The smaller one, which is around 35 meg, is only the installer. A lot of the files will be downloaded on the fly during the installation process, which I will show you later. The other package, which is close to 430 meg, this is the entire package. My recommendation is to download 430 meg package, which is a larger one, as far as possible. So basically I just need to click on that, and if you're interested to continue learning on your own or to explore MySQL even further, by all means you can sign up this community account so that you can participate in other discussions with the global audience essentially. So in my case, I would like to just start my download, so I will say no thanks. The download should be fairly rapid. Of course, that depends on your internet connection. Gladly, I have actually downloaded it earlier, so I do not have to wait for this download process. So when your download is completed, you should see this installation file. So double click on that. Okay, this is about the user access authority, so we just say yes to grant administrative access right to this particular installation process. And we would like to launch the installer application, and now you have loaded the very first installation page. So what we will select in terms of setup option is developer default, so there's the first bullet button, so we hit next. I have earlier actually installed the entire software program, so you'll see that I actually have a warning here saying that the path already exists, but it's just a warning, so it's perfectly fine. If you're installing this for the very first time, I don't think you will see this particular warning. In any case, hit next. So we'll ignore the warning in this case. You may not see the warning once again if you're installing this for the very first time. Typically, you will need to check some requirements depending on what are the existing application on your machine. You may have a slightly different list of requirements checks. Anyway, you should hit check in order to install those requirements automatically, and in this case it's all manual. These are all not that important for this course because these are essentially plugin for you to use MySQL on Excel, on Visual Studio, as well as Python. Those are not covered, these three particular software in this course, so we'll just click next in this case. It's perfectly okay if this has not been satisfied, so yes. So here we have arrived at this particular page whereby we will install the actual software program. For example, server, bench, server, as well as the workbench. These are the two most important component. Server basically is the backend of the MySQL environment, whereas Workbench will be the software interface that we will be using most of the time to develop our SQL script. So we will hit execute. It's going to take a little while, so I'm going to play some music. Hooray! So now you can see a list of completion. That is good news. All green text. That means all has everything has been performed successfully. So the next step is to hit on the next button and do a couple of configurations. Okay, so there are three key configurations that we will need to go through, which is MySQL server. MySQL router is not important, but we'll go through that as well as sample and example, which you might be interested to look at if you want to further your learning. So this is basically about setting up a cluster database, which is not really in our scope, but nevertheless, when you're free, you can certainly try to look at that later. We will hit next. So here is where we will actually configure the service. The service has to be running in the background on your machine, which is the server, and Microsoft Workbench basically will connect through the networking to this particular backend service. So in this case, we will hit next. Do pay attention to the port number. By default, it should be 3306. In the event that somehow some other software are using this particular port number, you will be given another port number. So it can be helpful sometimes for you to remember this particular port number for your MySQL server. So let's hit next. Then we will be asked to give some password. So here we have to give a password, which is the root or the administrator password for your MySQL server. It is very, very important for you to remember this password. In my case, I will just use password as the password. It is a very weak password, certainly. But it is okay, because so long as you can remember the password, you should be fine. Alright, this particular screen will be fairly different to the screen that you see because I have already configured the software on this machine previously. So I'm using the existing password. Okay, user be prompted to enter this password 2 times to make sure you give the right password. Once again, it is very important for you to remember this particular password. If unfortunately you just can't get the right password later, you have to redo the entire installation process. Okay, and this is the Windows service name. That is the background service that will be running in the Windows environment. It might also be helpful for you to remember this name, especially in the event that your server crashes later when we are writing our MySQL statement. If you know this Windows service name, it will be helpful for recovery. So here I will just click next. And we can now do the configuration, so we will hit execute. This should be pretty quick. Alright, so now we are done and we say finish. So we are done with the very first configuration. Now we'll move on to the router. We do not need to do anything here, so just hit finished. And finally our connection to the server. So here you'll be prompted to enter the password. The default administrator account is root, so we didn't have to change it in this case. So I will enter my password. In this case it is password. Hit check. Okay, if you have a green tick and a green highlight here, congratulations, you got the right password. So hit next and hit execute again. And so we'll be running some scripts in the background to complete the configuration. And now we are all set. So I will just finish it off. Here, I will keep these 2 boxes checked just to demonstrate to you that there are 2 key ways to interact with your MySQL server, which is the shell as well as the Workbench. We will mostly be using Workbench in our course. So let's hit finish. So here, this command prompt like thingy is the shell. So you basically can type SQL statement here and whatsoever. This is not very friendly, but I'm just trying to demonstrate to you that this is one possible way, but we won't be using this in our course, so we will just close it. Okay, so this is the window that we really want to see. This is the MySQL Workbench, and this is the welcome message to greet you to the MySQL environment. Here is your is the connection that has been set up for you to connect to your local instance of MySQL server that should be running in the background. So click on it, and here you'll be prompted to once again enter the password. So in my case, this is password. If you do not want to enter password every single time that you try to connect to your MySQL server, you can check save password in vault and hit OK. Okay, so here is the MySQL Workbench environment where we will get to write our SQL statements to create databases and so on. To verify that your installation is doing okay and the server is running, on the left hand side of this particular window under management, the very first selection is server status. Click on it. Alright, so here this new page is open up and it shows you the status of the server on your machine. What we really want to see is this particular green arrow which indicates that your server is running, and of course some other statistics with regards to the resources and performance of your machine. So I have a green arrow, so that's very good news. So now we have already deployed and we are all set to explore MySQL. So that's the end of my demonstration on the installation of MySQL server and MySQL Workbench. I hope you have been following okay. If you should have any problems with the installation, please do drop me an email, or you can actually approach me during our sessions. I will try my best to help you overcome this issue. Okay, so take care.